Hey there, my name's Jim Stime. Welcome to episode 1 of LA Fishguys. I've got an aquarium maintenance business by the name of Aquarium Design, and we're going to be building a 460-gallon fancy cylinder tank. Why don't you tag along with us? We'll be installing the filter in the cabinet below, a refrigeration unit off to the side, and putting the lighting in the canopy that's already in place above the top of the tank. I've asked my good friend Condi to help me out. So with a basic plan in place, we'll go ahead and unveil the aquarium. It's an artificial coral reef, and what a beauty. We'll get started by placing the bulkheads through the bottom of the aquarium and getting the return and suction line secured. And in turn, that'll allow me to begin to assemble the filter system and the circulation system below the aquarium. And so as Condi finishes the return assembly and I finish the plumbing below the aquarium, we'll begin to fill it up with water. And as it begins to fill up, we want to double check all the bulkheads, valves, and fittings on the underside of that tank. And with the tank already a third full, wouldn't you know it, we find our first little issue. And as you can see, there's a little bit of drippage right there on the inlet side of the circulation pump. And it's for these type of situations that I have incorporated union ball valves, which will allow me to remove that pump without having to drain the water, fix the threaded fittings, and replace the water pump and continue to fill the tank up. It seems curved and round were the preferred shapes during my business era, as reflected in this dental office check-in counter tank. It's a curved tank with its filters built into both ends of the tank. It was decorated by naturally colored coral skeletons and crowned with marble panels that enclosed the top. Its intent was to soothe frightened patients as they prepared to have dental work done. The round was the result of my jellyfish tanks that were built into the wall. Not only was this my first jelly aquarium installation, but we were also going to be learning how to service these tanks in the field at the same time. And I had to quickly develop a siphon wand so I could surgically siphon out the debris, as well as come up with a strategy for cleaning the inside of the tank, all without sucking up or beating up the jellyfish.
Now, I've had the opportunity to work on some unique aquariums, but this one is by far the most unique. It is in the bathroom, it's a curved tank, and it's half the shower.
Because of the tall, narrow aspects of the aquarium, we're definitely going to have to go with a wet-dry trickle filter. But we have to get the water down to the filter.
But to get the water down to the wet-dry trickle filter, we had to add an overflow box, what I'm going to simply call a pocket overflow, and that allows the water to be skimmed off at the surface, and it exits the back side of the box through the end of the tank and down into the filter system. Once again, because of the tall, narrow nature of the aquarium, I'm going to have to use more than one pump. 2 pumps. One pump to circulate water from the tank to the filter and back to the tank. The second pump to move water within the tank. We'll call that internal circulation. So to create this internal circulation, we use what I'm going to refer to as a spa pump or a high volume circulation pump. And again, it draws directly from the aquarium and returns directly to the aquarium.
This tank, like many of my aquariums, has the artificial natural coral skeletons as decorations. We'll go ahead and service this tank by cleaning it, vacuuming it, and doing a water change in the tank.
One of the really nice things about this aquarium is when you're done with it, you can take a shower.
But then there's also the more traditional rectangular built into the wall aquarium. And and this one I've been fortunate to be servicing weekly since the summer of 1996. But as you might guess, a tank that's been running that long develops its share of algae problems. I brought along my friend Rick, and we're going to pull the coral sculpture out of the tank to clean it. We'll also take advantage of the opportunity and do a large 100-gallon water change. But first, we have to get the dirty decorations out of the tank. This tank, too, has 2 sets of naturally colored coral decorations that have to come out first. And with the dirty corals removed, we can begin to lift out the coral sculpture. It's comprised of 5 different sections and made of fiberglass and colored resins. And once Rick has it outside, he can lift each section out and actually spray bleach directly upon them, and then begin to brush off the algae as it kills it quite quickly. With the sculptures out of the tank, I can more thoroughly clean the inside of the aquarium. And once Rick completes bleaching and brushing the sculptures...
What you doing there, Sparky?
Oh, you know, Pops, just the same old thing. This is called dunking the coral.
And even though it sounds silly, we have to ensure we get the bleach off that sculpture. And now it's time to start pumping that new salt water into the tank where we've taken out 100 gallons. And as soon as we've refilled the tank and those coral sculptures are free of bleach, we're going to start placing them back into the tank. We'll smooth out the gravel around the sculptures and then begin to put that second set of clean corals back into the tank. And after we've artistically redecorated the tank, we'll close it up, wipe down the front and back panels, and take a moment to admire my 3rd longest running aquarium service. It's now been a couple of months since we set up the fancy cylinder tank. We've added starter damselfish, and we've actually arrived today for our first service of the tank. We've changed the pleated cartridge and added some activated carbon to take the yellow out of the water. We're now wiping the interior free of some of the algae that's begun to build up inside the tank. But we've noticed something kind of interesting. There's a particular area here that just doesn't seem to really come clean. It doesn't seem as though it's algae that's growing. It actually seems as though it's a problem, kind of like in the acrylic itself. Could it be that this expensive, fancy cylinder aquarium has a defect in its material? Great, now I have to get the tank manufacturer out here. In addition to doing exotic saltwater fish coral reef systems and exploring jellyfish, another venture of mine has been into the realm of seahorses. This particular tank is set up to mimic a natural seahorse environment with appropriately colored hitching posts and tall artificial sea grasses. It has 3 inches of live sand, and the filter consists of
Typical wet-dry trickle filter with bioballs. There's a protein skimmer and discharges its water via a spray bar at the surface of the tank. And the big advantage is it not only moves the water at the surface, but as that water hits the front panel and moves down, it in turn forces the plants to stand back up straight.
Part of the issue of keeping seahorses has been the food. In the past, wild-caught seahorses were the rule, and live food was a necessity.
And so every week we have a shipment of live brine shrimp brought in.
And up until recently, this was the only way to obtain seahorses or to keep them alive. But now today, with advancements in tank-raised seahorses and the fact that the seahorses are being fed frozen foods from the beginning, makes this aspect of the hobby considerably easier to keep. In episode 11, we had one of the 2 tank manufacturers come out and evaluate the tank to help determine what the trouble was and why the tank was so frosty looking. He thought it might have just not been properly finished, and so we dropped the water level inside the tank and allowed him to go in and attempt to polish some of that frostiness out. Unfortunately, he too was unable to eliminate the frostiness in the material, so he would confer with the maker of the actual cylinder body and then determine how best to resolve the problem. Our most popular episode in the beginning was the visit to the various manufacturers and wholesalers, starting with the tank manufacturer where we picked up some product from, We then took it over to the crating company, where we would drop it off, have him crate it up, and have our freight company pick it up. And from there, we'll drive over to our livestock and dry goods wholesaler. And speaking of livestock, they've got an ocean full. On a typical day, as you walk through the fish wholesalers, you might see as many fish as if you put a mask and snorkel on and went into some coral reef. And speaking of coral reef, here too is where all the live rock, live sand, and all the various invertebrates are picked up from as well. And as I mentioned, dry goods also. There's quite the wide selection of all the various components you might need or dream of using for an aquarium. And from there, we'd slide on over to our decorative coral wholesaler. This is also the supplier where we get our frozen foods from. Not only does he have an extremely wide selection of decorative natural coral skeletons for sale, but he also offers artificial or the plastic ones as well.
Well, today is one of those days that kind of not looking forward to. As exciting as it is, we have to tear down this big cylinder tank.
That's right, both the tank manufacturers decided they would replace the tank. But I have to bring it to them. So I'm gonna break it down, and here's how I plan on doing it.
Over the top, and that PVC pipe is gonna come down here. Make again a little bit of a drop here. 2 trash cans are going to be sitting here. That water's...
That's right. My plan is to use gravity to my advantage. I'm going to create a large siphon using PVC pipe that'll suck not only the water, but the gravel out of the tank as well. It's going to flow all the way down here. The trick is getting the siphon started.
Who the hell's going to be sucking on that pipe?
Well,
What these guys don't realize is I've thought this out already.
What you're gonna do is hook up the garden hose. You're gonna fill that line all the way back to the aquarium with water. And then when you're ready to go, you take your hammer and knock this off. You're draining right here. So now it'll start back siphoning and it'll start to siphon right out of the tank.
And just exactly as I planned it, it worked. The siphon started, it sucked the water, it sucked the gravel. I felt pretty confident in myself.
I want to see him get all wet.
Of course you do.
it's only funny the first time.
Well, this time it's on video.
A little tomfoolery is okay, but this is a big job and it requires paying attention and expertise. And with the tank almost empty, we do lose the siphon, so we're going to use the sump pump to draw the rest of the water out of the tank. And once we have all the water out of the tank, we can then begin to disassemble the tank, starting first by cutting the pipes and the bulkheads out of the bottom of the tank. Once all the bulkheads are separated, we can begin to disassemble the equipment within the cabinet. Here's where we did discover one stowaway damsel, and with the net attached at the end of a pole, we're actually able to push him into one of the holes of the suction line out of the bottom of the tank. Quickly, we'll get him over into a bucket of water with his other friends that we extracted earlier, and hopefully he'll make it. Here's where the muscle or the strength part of aquarium service comes into play. There's 9 of us here to lower that tank off of its stand onto that plywood or pallet. From there, we're going to slip some 2x6s in through the pallet and we'll carry it out like Roman gladiators carrying Cleopatra back to her palace. We'll load it up in the truck, and from here we'll send it back to the coral manufacturer, then to the tank manufacturer. I don't have many coral reef tanks in my pool of aquarium service customers. This particular one is a soft coral reef, which sadly will be featured in future episodes involving algae problems. This particular tank is accessed from the back along where its equipment is kept. This was set up with a simple open sump and protein skimmer, but maybe that concept was way too simple. For the first 5 years of its existence, this tank actually did quite well. Most of the corals, again being soft corals, thrived, and the algae growth was able to be contained within every 2-week service visits. But over the course of time and allowing the customer to have whatever fish they desired, which included a rare golden banana eel, which also required large amounts of food, this particular tank developed an algae problem, which you'll see in future episodes. As you saw from the previous episode, we have removed the cylinder tank from the customer's house. It's loaded into the truck. We are en route to the coral insert manufacturer. They will pull the coral sculpture from the tank. We'll then drive over to the tank manufacturer, who will exchange the tank. Once I've got the tank exchanged and do a quick little inspection, I'll take it back to the coral manufacturer, and we'll actually leave it there for a week. And then the following Saturday, we're scheduled to install or reinstall that tank back into the house. So that's me with my customer service hat on. Now let me put my bill collector hat on. Well, part of doing business in any business, in this case the aquarium business, is dealing with customers who don't want to pay their bill. I have one customer, been servicing him for 13 years. 150-gallon tank, butterflies, pufferfish, hawkfish, tangs, clownfish. The tank's doing real well over time. He just didn't want to pay his bill. From monthly account, it went from a couple $100s a month to almost $1,200 a month. Every time I asked to get paid, it was an effort on his part. He'd grumble and complain, and he'd always just pay half the bill. Well, there's no reward in getting paid half the money. So I discontinued the service, sent him statements for 5 months, never heard a peep, certainly never got paid. So I had to submit paperwork to take him to small claims court. And that's where we're en route today. Los Angeles County Small Claims Court, Van Nuys, California. And so chances are they're not going to let me take the little camera into the courthouse with me, so I'll have to kind of get back to you with the end results. My former service customer, which is an attorney, what a frickin' liar! Unfortunately, there's no resolution yet. The court will make some kind of a decision and mail it out, and we'll see what it is. Really? Just got it in the mail. This is some kind of a decision on the small claims court issue. And it says judgment was entered as stated below. The defendant shall pay the plaintiff, Stime, $416.71 principal, but I got him. Now I just have to wait 30 days to see if he's going to put up a fight for $417. Well, good morning. Here we are, ready to reinstall the big cylinder tank. We're going to take the tank back into the house the same way we brought it out, kind of what I call gladiator style. 9 guys carrying it on a pallet. Now pay attention to the guy in the brown shirt. Is he using a pocket knife to cut the seam in the cardboard? Now watch him use the same pocket knife to cut the thin plastic film around the tank. Uh-oh. Did he just realize he cut into the tank? Now, look back and see if the camera's on.
There is one.
About this time, Condi, Reggie, and William discover the scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
That's correct, isn't it? That's not correct.
Scratched or cracked?
And cut it with try to open it with a blade or something.
How did that happen?
We're looking at it right now, the whole thing, and I see it right there.
You know how much force you have to do?
Now, do you think the guy in the brown shirt's gonna fess up?
Distortion, the halo.
We've also got a telephone call in to the homeowner to see what he wants to do in regards to this scratch.
It looks like a box cutter.
And having no other choice, we decided to move forward and lift the tank up onto the stand. And just when you think everything's going smoothly, as Condi jumps off the counter, his foot catches one of the custom-made light boxes that illuminates the bar top.
The whole thing is loose right now. When we moved it, it's actually real loose. If you, move it back and forth. So with this. Hello? Hey Chad, how you doing?
That's the homeowner calling back in.
Yeah, we're gonna have a problem where it looks like kind of a big scratch on your thing. Yes, he's here. Okay.
Uh-oh, not feeling good about this one.
Hello. Well, apparently there is a vertical scratch in the tank that most likely was done way before the cardboard that protects the tank was ever put on. At this point, I believe you have two options. One is to polish out the scratch. The alternative is to have the tank replaced, but I fear that you're going to end up going through 6 months worth of legal issues to get them to move forward on it. I have an inspection report and I did a visual inspection, but the entire tank is covered up in cardboard and plastic.
And with that, the homeowner makes a decision.
Okay. We'll position it, but we will not hook up the plumbing.
It's been decided just to position the tank on top of the stand, but we've run into another problem. The tank doesn't match the canopy any longer.
So this is a 200-gallon flat back hexagon tank. Nice clean corals.
And even though switching corals and wiping algae as well as vacuuming the gravel looks easy, it's not the only thing you have to be prepared for. One also needs to be able to interpret the performance of the filter system. This system uses a wet-dry trickle filter that has a drip plate that diffuses the water over the bioballs.
The problem here, I can see already, is the drip plate is so plugged up, the water's hardly passing through it. And you can see it's filled up, so it's just bypassing off the backside, which is missing the bioballs entirely. So we need to take that drip plate out and clean it.
Removing and cleaning the drip plate is actually quite easily done.
So it's not just draining water and replacing the water, but taking care of the system as you would a fine Ferrari. You've got to deal with certain things in there.
In this case, the efficiency of the biological filter. Everyone knows I'm big on wet-dry trickle filters, but if they're not operated properly, they're not going to work properly.
The water's passing through the pad and now dripping through all the series of holes in there. And in turn, it's raining down over the bioballs, which is what it's supposed to. If the water's not being exposed to the bioballs, more specifically the bacteria in the bioballs, it's not going to be a very good biological filter. And this would only become a bigger problem later on, and that's part of aquarium maintenance.
So with the gravel vacuumed, 20 gallons of water extracted, the filter system improved, and new seawater poured back into the tank, along with some clean corals and the exterior of the tank cleaned, the butterflies are ready to come out, and it looks great.
Okay, well, as you can see, we've slid the tank off of its metal stand onto a temporary plywood stand. The reason for that is, for whatever reason, the tank seems to be kittywampus or slightly out of alignment, because where it sits at the bottom and matches at the top is off about 3/8 of an inch. At the meantime, we're going to end up polishing out the scratches through here. Those are the results of the Jack the pocket knife guy.
And with Carpenter Brad leveling the stand, and Condi works on sanding and then polishing out the scratch. And I'll get Rick started on how the plumbing interfaces with the new tank. So everything's coming along real well, except for one area. Part of that scratch removal involves polishing or buffering out the scratch, and that's where a high-speed buffing wheel comes into play. And I think Condi's made that scratch disappear. So let's slide the tank over a bit. And with the tank slid back on top of its platform, Condi can go ahead and start working on the upper half of that big long 36-inch scratch. Now that the tank is slid back into position, we can also begin to reassemble the suction and return lines through the bottom of the tank. Since what we're doing is basically reassembling the same aquarium system, we don't have too much modification. It's more just a matter of coupling it back together. And as Condi installs the flexible returns at the top and Rick is still defining what parts go below, tempers begin to get a little flared. But we do get to the point where we can finally begin to put water back in the system, and since it now holds water and no leaks or drips, we'll go ahead and begin to put the gravel back in the tank as well. And we do continuously monitor all the fittings and bulkheads just to make sure there are no leaks or drips. They say practice makes perfect, and the second time around for the setup of this tank, no leaks or drips, so we'll go ahead and add the salt mix into the system. And once it fills up, we'll go ahead and remove the supply hose and wipe down the interior of the tank, as well as the exterior of the aquarium, and double check all those valves, tubes, and fittings once again. And for the second time, the 460-gallon fancy cylinder tank is back up and running.
We are en route to Van Nuys, California. Going to the Los Angeles County Superior Court this time. If you recall, a few months back, we had to go to Van Nuys once again for small claims court. I have a 14-year-long aquarium service customer that didn't want to pay his bill. So I did what you're supposed to do when someone doesn't pay their bill. Took him to small claims court. Here's what happens when you don't stand up for yourself. The service customer, being an attorney, obviously knows the law, and he has appealed that decision. So this morning, we're en route back again to the court in Los Angeles, this time Superior Court. So it's 9:15. We were first up once again, thanks to my attorney service customer persuading the judge that he had something more important to do. I think I made a good presentation, a good case for myself. I tried to keep it simple. I tried not to say extra things. We'll see what happens. The judge will take it under advisement, make some notes, and he'll make his decision, and I'll probably get something in the mail Monday, Tuesday, later on this week maybe. So we got a response from the Superior Court today in the mail. I wanted to share that with you. Let's see. James Boyd, Aquarium Design Plaintiff, Dickhead, Defendant. The appeal of the defendant and the appellate herein from judgment of small claims court. It is ordered, adjudged, and decreed that said plaintiff and respondent take nothing by his actions, and that said defendant and appellate have judgment for his costs in Superior Court in the sum of $0. take nothing by his action. I guess I didn't win. I guess I get nothing. That's a disappointment. I do know this, though. I'm not going to waste my time pursuing legal issues in the future. I'll come up with some other clever way of resolving my problems, starting first with not allowing anybody to have that kind of time frame to pay their bill. You've got 30 days. If you can't pay your bill in 30 days, I don't want to service you. I don't want to be involved with you. So we're going to be moving fish from a 215-gallon tank into a 300-gallon tank today, as well as do a big water change in the tank.
With the customer's assistance, we'll lift the canopy off the first tank, open the lids on the second tank, start acclimating fish now while I've got clean water to do so, and remove those dirty coral decorations from both tanks. And with both tanks drained about 50 gallons each, we'll start pumping water from the van, that 100-gallon container of new, fresh seawater, back into both of those aquariums. And while both tanks fill up, we can begin to redecorate the tanks with the decorative corals. And having acclimated the fish during the refill process, just after a short period of time, we're ready to start netting some of those new chromis damsels out and introducing that school of cool-looking fish into the aquarium. Unlike those fast-moving chromis, some of the slower-moving fish are just easier to catch by hand. In this case, the tomato clownfish I can just grab out of a bucket, lift up into the aquarium.
Snowflake.
We'll try it with this eel, but I think he's a little slippery.
Eat a slimy one.
Hold on, baby.
No, I got it. No.
Please
no,
don't.
no.
Please don't lose him on the carpet. Maybe you better use the little. Uh-oh.
Well, I probably better use the net before the eel gets upset and bites me.
Oh, there you go, baby. New home.
Eels are pretty cool, but not as cool as a school of chromis damselfish.
3 weeks.
One of the opportunities I had with the Jelly Aquarium was in Hollywood. It was a sale and installation of a large 48-inch tank behind the bar in an upcoming trendy Hollywood restaurant. Having previously provided the general contractor with the stand requirements, they built the stand, I brought the tank, and we both put them into position so they could build around it. After a few months, I returned and they had clad the tank with the copper panels they spoke of. It was now time for me to assemble the entire system. A jellyfish system consists of a wet-dry trickle filter, a refrigeration unit, as well as a reliable water pump. Our starting point is the return line inside the overflow. And that leads to the dual drain lines out of the bottom of the tank. We'll now install that reliable water pump to drive the filter system, which discharges up through a chiller unit, across the top to a bypass valve for recirculation, and then through a precision-controlled gate valve, which results in a complete and efficient cold water filter system.
And then we're just about ready to put water in it.
We'll go ahead and fill that tank up with water right out of the faucet. We're going to use synthetic sea salts as well. As the system fills up, we plug it in and get it running or circulating. And with the flicker of the fluorescent bulb, it becomes the focal point of the restaurant. I'm going to go ahead and let this system run for a couple weeks, and then I'll return with some dinner plate size moon jellyfish to start the system off. It turned out to be quite the hit at the grand opening, as well as a unique backdrop to this trendy Hollywood restaurant. And speaking of directions, here's a completely different direction for the fish guy. In this case, seahorses, and unfortunately, seahorses that are not doing well. We've got a seahorse here with what appears to be a swim bladder issue. So we're gonna dig into our little medical kit, something every bachelor has, and no, it's not condoms. It's needles, sewing needles. We're going to use the needle to poke or puncture the belly of the seahorse in an attempt to release the gas bubble.
Come on, little fella.
Now, there is a preferred way of holding a seahorse, and part of it involves allowing him to wrap his little tail around your pinky. Once he's comfortable and secure, he'll then allow you to work on him.
First, let's see if we can poke.
This just killed me to do it. And here you can see the small hole I've created and how fast the gas bubble deflates. And after expelling most of the air in that pouch, we'll release the seahorse, who in turn immediately runs down towards the bottom of the tank, and then to the back corner. Every once in a while, a great opportunity comes along, and my tank manufacturer has invited me to display the Jelly Aquarium in his booth at the Super Zoo Trade Show. So we're currently en route across the desert to Las Vegas, baby! We'll be exhibiting at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, but we first need to get past the union guys with the forklifts into the building. And having gotten our stuff in the building, it's time to set up 2 mini jelly aquariums. I've got 2 systems set up back to back in one of the corners of this island booth, so it should draw a lot of attention. Because these moon jellyfish are cold water, we'll need to allow that refrigeration unit to bring the temperature down a bit. In addition to acrylic and glass aquariums, my tank manufacturer is showing off a line of artificial corals this year. After dropping in temperature, we've added the jellyfish to both tanks, then wiped them down and cleaned them in anticipation of tomorrow's show opening. And just in time to check into our hotel and check out the local activity. They've got 1-armed bandits, 2-armed bandits, 5-card bandits, and there's a roulette of bandits. And yet for others like myself, their product is their gamble in hopes of a big payoff. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, we're in line the following morning to register and enter the trade show. This is where all the big pet names are, and I'm very fortunate to be able to display my product at this type of a show. And the jellies are doing real well, too. This is a full-line pet show which includes dog and cat grooming contests, as well as a myriad of specialized pet products and accessories for animals of all kinds. So I'm not sure how or why this actually happens to me, but I'm cruising through the trade show trying to kind of give you an eyeball as to what's going on and what's being presented, and all of a sudden I get accosted by this fellow.
You got to rewind this. None of this is allowed to be on video. You have to rewind.
Hands off the camera.
No.
Take your hands off the camera.
Rewind this part.
Rewind it.
Rewind.
Get your hands off the fucking camera.
Don't even go there with me.
After a few tense moments and a bit of a Mexican standoff, I managed to walk away not only with my pride and camera still in hand, but my heart was ready to leap out of my chest. Obviously, I avoided that side of the building, the balance of the trade show. Episode 35 brings us up to date with the additions of fish into the fancy cylinder tank. We've successfully added a school of chromis damsels, Haniocus butterflies, as well as a cowfish and a number of other dwarf or pygmy angelfish. Today, I'm adding some butterfly fish. We're going to explore an option today, using a sump pump and a nozzle to try to blow off some of that algae. Good idea, but not very practical and wasn't very successful. It was too awkward to work within the confines of the tank, and it really was not strong enough to blow the algae, which turns out to really not be algae, off the coral decorations itself. So I'll end up having to come up with some other alternative to try to figure out how to control that algae on this coral sculpture. In the meantime, it's back to the old hand-driven bristle brush. And this might be a bit fortuitous, but it turns out that bristle brush is my most effective tool for controlling algae in the tank. So it's time to add the butterflies, and as usual, I'll do this by hand. I've got 2 different pairs of butterfly fish I'm adding today. This is part of my plan to add all the similar fish at one time. The first species in is the raccoon butterfly fish. I'm striving to add these in pairs. This will decrease territorialism. And at this point, they've paired up together and are getting along. I'll go ahead and add the next pair. These are golden butterflies from the Red Sea. Assuming the fish does not leap out of your hand, the advantage of lifting them up by hand is they won't get caught in the nets you would normally use. Now there's an attractive pair of blue cheek or golden butterfly fish. There's also a unique pair of raccoon butterfly fish hiding up underneath one of those coral shelves. The next addition will be some large angelfish, but we'll give the tank a little bit of time to settle in before we add those big fish to the tank. And that concludes the original 35 LA Fishguys shows, to which there are now over 100 episodes online, ranging from discussions about equipment to medications, as well as the installation of other fish and coral reef tanks, all in this new widescreen format. You can see LA Fishguys on YouTube as well as lafishguys.com. And while I have your attention, since you're here attending the most prestigious aquarium conference and have obviously made a commitment to learn more about your aquarium, it's also an opportunity to make new friends. So turn to the person next to you and introduce yourself. And with that said, I wish you the best of luck with your aquarium venture, and as always, especially in these tough economic times, always keep moving forward.